Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we take the complexity of a massive multi-decade career and try to boil it down to the essential, fascinating, and sometimes wildly unexpected takeaways.
And today we are immersing ourselves in the life and sound of a musician, a composer, a band leader who didn't just define modern jazz. He then sort of casually redefined funk, electro, and hip-hop right after.
We are, of course, talking about Herbert Jeffrey Hancock, born April 12, 1940.
And if you need, just a quick metric to understand the sheer weight of his talent, look no further than a 2024 ranking from the Daily Telegraph.
I saw this one.
They named him, flat out, the greatest keyboard player of all time.
Of all time. That's pretty high bar.
It is, and that's the kind of legacy of continuous innovation we're tasked with unpacking today.
So that's our mission for this deep dive. We're going to trace that almost unbelievable arc, from a classical prodigy to a post-bop architect in, the most famous jazz quintet of the 20th century.
And then all the way through to him just blowing up the whole concept of jazz by embracing synthesizers and, crossing over to the global pop charts.
It's really about his philosophy, this constant restless drive, and how that mind, which was equally good at engineering and improvisation, just continuously redefined what a keyboard could even do in modern music.
Right, whether it was an acoustic piano or a wall of synthesizers.
And we'll definitely be hitting some of those foundational compositions. They're basically part of the language of jazz now. Standards like Cantaloupe Island, Watermelon Man, Maiden Voyage.
And of course, Chameleon. These aren't just songs. They're more like architectural blueprints for entire genres.
Okay, so let's unpack the foundation of this genius. Hancock was born in Chicago, Illinois. His parents, Winnie Bell, a secretary, and Wayman Edward Hancock, a meat inspector. They named him after the singer and actor Herb Jeffries.
But the critical starting point, the thing that really informs everything else, is the classical training.
Right from the very beginning.
Absolutely. Like a lot of the great jazz pianists of his generation, thinking of giants like Keith Jarrett or Chick Corea, he started young, classical piano lessons at age 7.
But the label child prodigy for Hancock, it wasn't just hype.
No, not at all. He had the documentation, to prove it. At the incredible age of 11, on February 5, 1952, he wasn't just playing in a little recital.
No, this is the big leagues.
He performed the first movement of Mozart's Piano Concerto No. 26 in D major, K5 through Z7, the famous Coronation Concerto.
With the Chicago Symphony Orchestra?
With the CSO. That is an enormous stage for a preteen. It requires not just the technique, but a really profound understanding of classical structure.
And that experience, that really instills in him this foundational understanding of musical architecture, precision, which he would later just apply to the fluidity of jazz.
But the academic side gives us an equally important clue to his later mastery of electronics. He went to Hyde Park High School and then graduated from Grinnell College in 1960.
And this is the part that always gets me. He walks out of college not just with a music degree.
Right.
But with degrees in both music and electrical engineering.
Electrical engineering. And this is not just a footnote.
No, we cannot stress this enough.
That engineering background seems to inform his fascination, his quick adoption, and then his eventual mastery of electronic instruments decades down the line. It's the perfect combination.
It really is. You have the structure of circuits on one hand and the fluidity of sound waves on the other.
It creates a mind that sees music not just as notes, but as systems, as patterns, as, programmable sonic colors.
A mind that understands how things work, and therefore how they can be broken and rebuilt.
Exactly. And just to put a physical stamp on that engineering mind early on, we should probably mention the car.
Ah, yes.
Yeah.
The famous 1963 AC Shelby Cobra.
Precisely. So this kid who just graduated with an engineering degree moves to New York and in 1963 buys a brand new Shelby Cobra for $6,000.
Its serial number CSX 2006, the 6th Cobra ever produced.
The 6th one. And the fact that he still owns it today, which makes him the longest continuous owner of a Cobra, that says so much about the value he places on mechanism, history, and perfection.
It's like a physical manifestation of the structure and precision that defines his classical and his engineering roots.
Totally. A phenomenal detail. But during those college years, he didn't have a formal jazz teacher. He was self-taught, just absorbing everything by ear.
And that reliance on the ear over formal instruction, that's so crucial.
For sure. He was just soaking in the giants, the aggressive rhythms of hard bop from Art Blakey's Jazz Messengers, the coolness of Miles Davis's Birth of the Cool, and of course the intricate piano playing of Bill Evans, George Shearing, Errol Garner, Oscar Peterson. It was a rigorous, self-curated education.
But the real harmonic aha moment, the one that unlocked his signature harmonic sound, it came from a place completely outside of the jazz world.
Absolutely. The turning point wasn't a horn player. It wasn't a famous jazz pianist. It was this highly sophisticated vocal group, the Hi-Los, and their arranger, Claire Fisher.
That's amazing. Why the Hi-Los specifically?
Yeah.
What was he hearing there that he wasn't getting from, say, Bill Evans?
He was hearing density and ambiguity. Fisher's arrangements used what Hancock called much farther out voicings.
Farther out voicings. Okay, so what does that actually mean for a pianist?
Well, in jazz terms, it means moving beyond the simple, the root, third, fifth structures.
Basics.
Exactly, the basics. He started using things like chordal harmonies chords built on intervals of fourths, or these really complex, often rootless voicings that just sort of float above the underlying harmony.
So he heard that in their vocal arrangements.
Right. The Hi-Los used these tight, complex vocal cluster chords, and Hancock realized he could translate that dense, shimmering quality to the piano. That's the signature sound you hear on albums like Speak Like a Child. It gave his music this sophisticated, almost cinematic quality that was pretty rare in hard bop at the time.
That's a powerful insight. It really confirms he was always a synthesis, right? Taking these disparate parts, classical structure, vocal harmony, engineering, and just integrating them into his own unique thing.
And he did try some formal composition study, briefly with Vittorio Giannini in New York in 1960.
But it was brief.
Very brief. And he also cited the relatively unknown Chicago pianist Chris Anderson as his harmonic guru just after hearing him play once in 1960.
Wow.
It just shows that his ear was so refined he could absorb this profound career-changing insight from a single session.
So all of this grounding leads directly to his professional debut. He moves back to Chicago after college, works with some huge figures like Donald Byrd and Coleman Hawkins.
Yeah.
And then he lands his first major record deal.
That was the album taken off for Blue Note Records in 1962, a really confident swinging debut. But the key track on there was his composition Watermelon Man.
A monster hit.
Huge success. It crossed into the pop landscape when it became a hit single for the Latin jazz conga player Mongo Santa Maria.
But the truly critical moment wasn't the hit single itself. It wasn't the commercial success. It was the listener it attracted.
Exactly. Taken off, and the melodic strength of Watermelon Man caught the attention of Miles Davis,
Who at that very moment was in the process of dismantling his existing band and putting together what would become the second great quintet.
It was a direct consequence of that early mastery. The success of that debut track didn't just get him attention, it got him the most coveted job in jazz, a job that would fundamentally change the course of jazz history and his own artistic direction forever.
Okay, so as we move into part two, we're in 1963. This is a pivot point not just for Hancock, but really for the entire progression of jazz. Miles Davis seeks him out in May of '63, recognizing him as one of the most promising talents.
And maybe one of the only pianists willing to break the rules Miles wanted to break.
And what Miles put together was, by all accounts, one of the greatest rhythm sections in the history of the music.
No question. It was Hancock on piano, Ron Carter on bass, and a 17-year-old Tony Williams on drums. Just incredible. And when Wayne Shorter joined on tenor saxophone, the second great quintet was fully formed.
They were just a great band, though. They fundamentally changed the language of the music. The sources all confirmed this rhythm section. Hancock, Carter, and Williams were the primary architects of the post-bop sound.
And this is where we need to slow down and really define what post-bop even means. Hard bop, the style Miles had previously mastered, it relied on these defined chord changes and a steady swing.
Right.
Post-bop, which this quintet pioneered, was characterized by radical freedom. They moved away from fixed, predetermined chord sequences, they were using modal structures, and they embraced rhythmic displacement.
Rhythmic displacement, that's the key interaction, isn't it?
It's everything. Tony Williams, despite his age, was a revolutionary. He wasn't just keeping time, he was actively breaking it up, constantly providing rhythmic commentary.
And Ron Carter.
His bass lines became melodic and mobile, not just playing the root notes for support. And Hancock sat right in the middle, using that harmonic ambiguity, those Claire Fisher voicings, to allow the music to just shift directions suddenly.
So the whole rhythm section was acting like three independent but hyper-aware voices.
Exactly. Constantly reacting, constantly challenging each other. It created a sound that was fluid and interactive rather than structured and repetitive.
That concept of constant interaction must have been, Exhausting, but also incredibly fertile for Hancock's compositional mind.
Immensely fertile. His style under Miles evolved so rapidly. He moved away from that busy block chord style of bop piano and developed a more spacious, reflective approach.
Leaving more room for Miles and Shorter.
Exactly. He learned the value of silence from Miles when not to play, which made his contributions that much more impactful.
And while he's redefining the rhythm section on the road with Miles, he's simultaneously having this tremendously prolific career under his own name at Blue Note.
Oh, he was recording constantly, both as a leader and a sideman, producing albums that really cemented his status as a major composer.
His Blue Note output during this period is just monumental.
It really is. Albums like My Point of View in '63, Speak Like a Child in '68, The Prisoner in '69, they're all essential.
Yeah.
But the absolute compositional peak of this era, and maybe his entire acoustic career, is Maiden Voyage from 1965.
Maiden Voyage is iconic, but how does that album specifically reflect the synthesis of his background? The engineer meeting the improviser.
It's the perfect demonstration of controlled structure leading to limitless freedom. Maiden Voyage is a modal jazz piece, built around 4 chords that cycle very slowly.
So it's sparse.
Very sparse. It's built primarily on those chordal harmonies chords built in fourths, sounding open and cool, far from the dense chord changes of traditional jazz. So this sparse, structured framework, that's the engineer side, it creates this incredible sense of space. It's just the vast ocean the album's concept invokes.
And then the improvisers, the jazz side, they use that simple, profound structure to just build these expansive emotional landscapes.
Exactly. It's elegant, deceptively simple, and deeply profound. It became one of the most played standards in jazz history for a reason.
And he wasn't just limiting himself to the core quintet either. He was the keyboardist of choice for pretty much everyone coming through Blue Note.
He was everywhere. Grant Green, Eric Dolphy, Wayne Shorter on his solo work, Freddie Hubbard. I mean, if you were in New York's mid-'60s jazz scene, you were playing with Herbie Hancock.
And he got experimental on his own records, too, pushing the boundaries of what even Blue Note would accept.
For sure. Take Inventions and Dimensions from 1963. It was an album of almost entirely improvised music.
Wow.
Just him, Paul Chambers on bass, and 2 Latin percussionists. This willingness to explore unstructured, spur-of-the-moment composition was always simmering under the surface, a kind of counterpoint to his precise classical training.
Speaking of structured exploration, this is also the period where he started to venture into film and commercial music.
Right. Bridging that gap between sophisticated jazz and commercial appeal, which might surprise some people, he composed the score for Michelangelo Antonioni's seminal 1966 film Blow Up.
That was his very first feature film soundtrack.
It was, but he also used his precise musical skill to write catchy themes for TV commercials.
The things you would never associate with a jazz genius.
Right. Pillsbury Space Food Sticks, Standard Oil, Tab Diet Cola, and even Virginia Slims and Silva Thins cigarettes.
And this commercial work often led to these great insider music anecdotes. Tell us the Silva Thins story, because it really highlights his adaptability.
It's a classic case of artistic repurposing. So he wrote this cool spy-type theme for a series of Silva Thins commercials in 1967.
Okay.
He genuinely liked the melody and the harmony so much that he wanted to record it as a proper song for an album. But the ad agency held the rights to the original arrangement and wouldn't let him record it verbatim for commercial release.
So what did the engineer/composer do?
He basically self-sampled and rearranged it. He kept the core harmonic idea, but he significantly rewrote the piece. He changed the harmony, the tempo, the tone, and released it as the track He Who Lives in Fear on his 1969 album, The Prisoner.
That's incredible.
It's a remarkable example of adapting and reusing complex material. And similarly, the sublime Maiden Voyage, that beautiful, tranquil standard,
Don't tell me.
it actually originated as a theme for a cologne advertisement. He proved that genius can be applied to any brief.
That commercial work just proves he was already bridging that gap between sophisticated jazz composition and commercial hooks way before he became a pop star.
For sure. But the biggest structural change came right as he was leaving Miles Davis. The electric shift.
Yes, the transition to electric keyboards was forced on him, but it was utterly pivotal.
Towards the end of his time with Miles, Davis was pushing the band towards rock and popular music elements, a move that would culminate in Bitches Brew in 1970. And Hancock, coming from that acoustic tradition, was initially pretty reluctant to play electric piano.
But Miles insisted, right?
He did. Miles convinced Hancock to start doubling on electric keyboards, most notably the Fender Rhodes electric piano.
which is a completely different sound.
A totally different beast. The Rhodes doesn't have that bell-like clarity or dynamic range of an acoustic piano. It has this metallic, sustained, slightly gritty tone. And that change from the organic sound of wood and felt hammers to the sustained, electrified tone of tines and pickups, it fundamentally shaped the second half of his career.
So many jazz purists felt that the electric keyboard diminished the acoustic purity of the music. I mean, that led to huge rifts in the jazz world. Did Hancock ever talk about that controversy, about Miles forcing that shift?
He certainly did. He saw it initially as an unwelcome intrusion. But later, in retrospect, he recognized that Miles was forcing him and the entire genre to confront modern technology and popular culture.
A push he desperately needed.
Exactly. And he adapted quickly, recognizing the possibilities for new textures and sounds that the acoustic instrument just couldn't provide.
And then he formed his own sextet in the summer of '68 after being dismissed from Davis's band.
Yeah, for returning late from his honeymoon in Brazil. He was late, Miles was strict, and that was that.
But even after he was officially fired, his influence was so crucial that he continued to appear on subsequent groundbreaking Davis records like In a Silent Way and On the Corner for a few more years.
The connection wasn't totally severed, but the baton had definitely been passed. So moving into the 1970s, Hancock's electronic exploration just accelerates rapidly. This is driven by the freedom he got after leaving Blue Note in 1969 and signing with Warner Bros.
And his first effort was surprisingly R&B inflected. He composed the soundtrack for that Bill Cosby animated special, Hey, 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 It's Fat Albert.
Right, with the music included on the album Fat Albert Rotunda, it had a strong R&B and jazz flavor, moving closer to the popular groove.
But then came the deep, abstract dive into pure electronic exploration, heavily influenced by Miles Davis's Bitches Brew and this emerging world of modular synthesis. This led to his most abstract and technically demanding phase, the Mwandishi era.
Absolutely. This is where the engineering and musical minds just collide dramatically. He became obsessed with electronic musical instruments.
And the Mwandishi period, running roughly from 71 to 73, was based around this incredible sextet, or septet.
It was a monster band. Buster Williams, Billy Hart, Eddie Henderson, Julian Priester, and Benny Maupin. And critically, they brought in Patrick Gleason specifically to handle the complex, state-of-the-art synthesizers.
The name itself, Mwandishi, is a statement of intent, right? It's Swahili for writer.
It implies creation, deep conceptual work, and the music was so far removed from post-bop swing, it was cosmic, textural, highly abstract.
It was sonic science fiction.
Totally, characterized by strong improvisational aspects and showing a heavy influence from contemporary classical electronic composers like Karlheinz Stockhausen. It was deep avant-garde jazz fusion.
And the specific year here really tells the story of the sound. It wasn't just the Fender Rhodes anymore. This was a technological fortress.
It was a massive rig for the early 70s. They used the Rhodes, sure, but they layered in these pioneering modular synths. The ARP Odyssey, the huge ARP 2600.
Which was known for its flexibility.
Exactly. And the ARP Pro Soloist synthesizer and the colossal room-sized Moog synthesizer the third. The Mellotron was also key.
For the listener who might not be familiar, what does a mellotron bring to that sound compared to a pure synthesizer?
The Mellotron is an electromechanical keyboard. It uses tape loops of recorded instrument strings, brass, a choir to create this lush, eerie, and often unstable sonic texture. So in the context of Mwandishi, it provided those sprawling atmospheric textures that made the albums Mwandishi, Crossings, and Sextant sound so much larger and more ambient than traditional jazz records. They truly pushed the instruments to their limits.
It was high art fusion, but high art is often commercially challenging.
Yeah, the Mwandishi era, while artistically fertile, was not commercially sustainable. So in 1973, Hancock made an abrupt but very calculated pivot.
He made a deliberate decision to reconnect with his Chicago roots and the R&B grooves he loved.
Right. He argued that he needed to play music that people could feel and relate to instantly, so he streamlined the band, kept only Benny Maupin, and formed the Headhunters.
Adding the Funk Masters, Paul Jackson on bass, Bill Summers on percussion, and Harvey Mason on drums.
And this change of focus resulted in the album Headhunters in 1973. This was the revolution that defined the genre for a generation.
It was instantaneous.
Completely. Headhunters stripped away the ambient complexity of Mwandishi and focused instead on rhythmic lock and deep funk groove, all delivered through a precise electronic medium.
It became a massive commercial hit, crossed over to pop audiences, got widespread recognition. But we do have to note the critique.
For sure. Within the strict academic jazz community, it faced a lot of criticism for being too commercial, too simple, for prioritizing groove over complex harmonic improvisation.
So how did the success of Headhunters change the internal dynamics of the jazz world at that time? Was it seen as selling out or innovating?
It was absolutely divisive. For older jazz musicians, it was selling out. It replaced the intellectual purity of post-bop with the relentless syncopation of funk. But for the younger generation, it was pure innovation.
A sign that jazz could engage with the music of the street. It was a bridge.
Exactly. And the enduring impact is massive. The sources confirm AllMusic noted that it still sounds fresh and vital 3 decades after its initial release, and its genre bending proved vastly influential on not only jazz, but funk, soul, and hip-hop.
You just have to listen to the track Chameleon. That bass line, played by Paul Jackson, is often cited as one of the most foundational funk grooves of the 20th century.
It's repetitive, heavily syncopated, and perfectly synthesized. It's the engineer's mind applying structural rigor to dance music.
And they revisited Watermelon Man from his debut, but they just transformed it.
Totally. They added indigenous sounds, but kept that core groove. This was fusion defined.
The success was immediate. They quickly released a follow-up thrust in '74, which saw Mike Clark replace Harvey Mason on drums.
And they released that excellent live album from Japan, Flood, in 1975. The Headhunters proved that electrified, funky jazz was commercially viable both in the studio and on stage.
Alongside this jazz-funk trajectory, he was still balancing his scoring work. He composed the score for the controversial film The Spook, Who Sat by the Door in '73.
A work that blended funk and experimental sounds, yeah. And the following year, the soundtrack for the first Death Wish film.
So the transition toward more commercial jazz-funk sounds continued right through the mid-'70s with albums like Manchild and Secrets. And while these featured members of the Headhunters, they weren't billed as the full group anymore.
Right. Hancock was building an empire based on groove and electronic texture. This period really represents the pinnacle of his shift from the acoustic architect of post-bop to the electronic innovator of jazz funk.
He successfully navigated that really challenging terrain between artistic purity and massive commercial success. And in doing so, he fundamentally changed the expectations of a jazz musician's career. As we move into the late '70s and '80s, Hancock's career becomes this fascinating exercise in dichotomy. He's simultaneously embracing an acoustic revival, cementing his jazz legacy.
While diving headfirst into electronic disco and pioneering hip-hop sounds, he was truly living 2 musical lives.
Let's look at the acoustic work first, because it was so vital to balance all that electronic experimentation.
For sure. He recorded a significant duet album with Chick Corea, which must have been a satisfying collaboration considering Corea had replaced him in the Miles Davis Band years earlier. And he also released the solo acoustic album, The Piano, in 1979.
And this is where the VSOP era began. Very special one-time performance. It started around '76, and it essentially became an acoustic reunion tour for the Miles Davis rhythm section.
It was a beautiful return to form, touring with his legendary former partners, Tony Williams and Ron Carter. They proved that the magic of that rhythm section hadn't faded at all.
They recorded albums like Herbie Hancock Trio in 1981.
Right. They were reaffirming the integrity of the acoustic tradition at the very same time they were defining the electronic future.
The VSOP concept then expanded into VSOP2 when Hancock, Williams, and Carter toured internationally with the emerging stars of the new traditionalist movement, the Marsalis brothers.
Wynton and Branford, yeah. That quintet is featured on Wynton Marsalis's debut album in 1981. They even performed at the Playboy Jazz Festival in '84 as a sextet, adding the vocal brilliance of Bobby McFerrin.
So on one hand, he's cementing his acoustic jazz legend status.
But in the other, he's embracing the era of disco and synthesized pop with gusto. From '78 to '82, he recorded several albums of jazz-inflected disco, using the technological tools he'd perfected in the Mwandishi and Headhunters eras for pure commercial appeal.
And the album Sunlight from '78 is notable because it introduced his distinctive use of the vocoder.
Right, a device that uses a synthesizer to modify the human voice. The vocoder allowed him to sing, but in this totally synthetic, robotic way, which was extremely novel at the time.
And this resulted in the British hit, I Thought It Was You.
It did, and he continued that vocoder sound with Feat's Don't Fail Me Now in '79, which gave him another UK hit, You Bet Your Love. Critics at the time were, let's say, largely unimpressed with this commercial direction.
I can imagine.
But Herbie was just exploring the absolute limits of the tools at his disposal. He was preparing for the next, even larger leap.
That exploration paid off massively in 1983 with his collaboration with the experimental bassist and producer Bill Laswell. This partnership truly pushed him into the global pop stratosphere.
This is where his engineering mind and his sense of rhythm found their perfect 80s expression. The collaboration resulted in the Future Shock trilogy, starting with the album Future Shock in '83 and the seismic single Rockit.
An international pop hit, a Grammy Award winner, and one of the defining songs of the decade.
And it's historically cited as the first jazz hip-hop song. It just exploded the boundaries of what a jazz musician could accomplish.
Rockit became an anthem for breakdancers worldwide and a foundational text for the hip-hop movement in the 80s.
But its revolutionary aspect was intensely technical. It was the first mainstream, non-rap single by an established jazz artist, no less to feature scratching so prominently.
Okay, let's clarify that for the audience. What exactly was scratching, and why was it so shocking to hear on a global pop hit in 1983?
So, scratching is the rhythmic manipulation of a vinyl record by a turntablist, in this case, the great DJ Grand Mixer DXT, while the needle is playing. It creates these unique, percussive, and often abrasive sounds.
And before Rockit, this was almost exclusively the domain of underground hip-hop DJs.
Completely. So putting that raw, urban, technically demanding, and entirely new sonic texture front and center on a Grammy-winning record, it meant Hancock instantly legitimized the turntable as a genuine musical instrument to a mass audience. He integrated this chaotic, unpredictable element into his precise, engineered structure.
And the music video was just as revolutionary. Directed by Godley and Krem with these incredible, unsettling, robot-like artworks by Jim Whiting.
A visual masterpiece that matched the futurism of the music. It was an instant smash on the fledgling MTV network, and it won 5 awards at the very first MTV Video Music Awards.
A true multimedia phenomenon. It proves he wasn't just chasing trends, he was dictating them.
And his electronic experimentation with Laswell continued, cementing his status as a sonic futurist on the Grammy-winning sound system in '84 and Perfect Machine in '88.
But while he was pushing the boundaries of technology, he didn't abandon his more traditional musical skills. In fact, he achieved his highest non-music industry honor during this period by combining his acting and scoring abilities.
That would be the Academy Award. He won the Oscar for Best Original Music Score for the film Round Midnight in 1986, a beautiful film about the jazz scene in which he also acted, playing the character Eddie Wayne.
Winning an Oscar in the mid-'80s while you have top 10 electro-funk hits and you're touring with Wynton Marsalis that's a staggering feat of professional versatility.
It's a level few artists in history have ever matched. And he had a prolific film scoring run during this time, including A Soldier Story, Joe Dancer, Your Life is Calling, Action Jackson, and Colors.
And he was still exploring world music textures, which just speaks to his restless nature. He recorded Village Life with the Gambian kora player Fode Musasuso.
And the Live Jazz Africa in '87. After the Perfect Machine tour, having pushed the limits of Columbia Records for 15 years, he decided to leave the label ready for the next phase of reinvention. So as we move into the 1990s and beyond, Hancock enters this phase defined by profound tributes, critical institutionalization, and continuous high-profile collaborations.
Proving he was still determined to reinvent himself every few years, even as he entered his 50s and 60s.
The decade started with a major touring group. He toured with Jack DeJohnette, Dave Holland, and Pat Metheny on the 1990 Parallel Realities Tour, a powerhouse quartet of modern virtuosos.
But the most significant reunion came in 1994.
That was the A Tribute to Miles album. He reunited with the surviving members of the second great quintet Ron Carter, Tony Williams, and Wayne Shorter, with Wallace Roney playing Davis's trumpet part.
That must have been a critical moment for the jazz world.
Oh, it was huge. It demonstrated the enduring power and structural integrity of that original rhythm section. It won a Grammy for Best Group Album.
But true to form, after this return to acoustic jazz royalty, he immediately swung back to genre bending.
Right. Releasing the acid jazz album, This Is Da Drum, in 1994, fully integrating the complex rhythmic structures of hip-hop and electronica into his compositional ideas. He was never content to stay in one lane for long.
And he proved his willingness to engage with contemporary popular music from a compositional standpoint, too. In 1995, his album, The New Standard.
Right. It featured an all-star band interpreting pop songs by giants like Nirvana. They did All Apologies, Stevie Wonder, Prince, and the Beatles.
That's a radical way of looking at what constitutes a standard. He was basically arguing that Musical longevity isn't just confined to Broadway tunes or old jazz classics.
Exactly, that it's inherent in quality pop composition. Then he released a significant duet album in '97, One Plus One, with his longtime collaborator Wayne Shorter.
Their musical connection had always been profound.
And one of the compositions, Aung San Suu Kyi, was recognized with a Grammy for Best Instrumental Composition, just showcasing their continued, nuanced compositional output.
And he closed out the decade with a massive commercial and critical hit, Gershwin's World, in '98.
It achieved great success by featuring this wide array of guest stars: Stevie Wonder, Kathleen Battle, Joni Mitchell, linking his classical and jazz roots to the great American songbook.
Moving into the 21st century, he continued his electronica focus. Future to Future in 2001 reunited him with Bill Laswell.
And brought in the modern turntablist Rob Swift, demonstrating that he was still adapting to new sound technology and staying relevant, not just becoming a jazz traditionalist resting on his laurels.
But the straight jazz tradition wasn't forgotten. Also in 2001, he partnered with Michael Brecker and Roy Hargrove for the live album Directions in Music, live at Massey Hall.
A tribute to Miles Davis and John Coltrane, yeah. It won a Grammy for Best Jazz Instrumental Album. He was proving he could move effortlessly between the most demanding acoustic jazz and cutting-edge electronic sounds.
Then came the high-profile pop duets of the mid-2000s. The 2005 album Possibilities featured duets with commercial powerhouses.
Carlos Santana, Paul Simon, Annie Lennox, Christina Aguilera, Sting. This was a clear strategy to reach the broadest possible audience with his unique musicality and compositional rigor.
The pinnacle of his modern success has to be his tribute to his friend and collaborator, Joni Mitchell.
Oh, River. The Joni Letters from 2007 was a masterpiece of restraint and interpretation. It featured vocalists like Norah Jones, Tina Turner, and Corinne Bailey Rae, with Mitchell herself appearing, and Leonard Cohen contributing a spoken piece.
He approached Mitchell's intensely personal and complex compositions with the same harmonic sophistication he used in post-bop.
And this album was history-making. It won the 2008 Grammy for Album of the Year.
Which is critical to remember. It made it only the second time in history a jazz album had won that prestigious cross-genre award.
Right. It speaks volumes about the universality and the structural appeal of his musicianship.
He continued that collaborative, global focus with the Imagine Project in 2010. And beyond recording, his legacy is now cemented in the academic world.
For sure. Since 2012, Hancock has been a professor at the UCLA Herb Alpert School of Music.
And he holds a foundational leadership role as the chairman of the Herbie Hancock Institute of Jazz, which was formerly known as the Thelonious Monk Institute until 2019.
He was also named a UNESCO Goodwill Ambassador for Intercultural Dialogue in 2011. These aren't just honorary titles, they're active roles in shaping the future of music education.
But for those truly interested in the intellectual scaffolding behind his music, his most significant academic contribution might be those Charles Eliot Norton Professor of Poetry lectures he delivered at Harvard in 2014.
Yeah, focused entirely on the theme, the ethics of jazz. This is where he really formalized that philosophical connection between his engineering mind, his Buddhist practice, and his improvisational music.
And he's still actively creating and looking forward. His upcoming album is being produced by modern heavyweights like Terrace Martin.
And it's stacked with the vanguard of contemporary music: Kendrick Lamar, Kamasi Washington, Thundercat, Flying Lotus, Snoop Dogg. It just shows he is still connecting with new generations and new sonic textures.
His career awards snapshot is just staggering. 14 Grammy Awards, the 86th Academy Award, Kennedy Center Honors in 2013.
And he was even named a 2025 laureate for the prestigious Polar Music Prize. He is one of the very few artists whose influence is recognized across every major field of performance and composition, from the concert hall to the DJ booth.
We've covered the music, the technology, and the academic legacy, but the deep dive always looks beyond the discography for the personal stories and philosophies that ground the legend.
Right. Herbie Hancock has been married to Gigi Meixner since 1968, and they have a daughter.
And Gigi is clearly a vital pillar of his life and career.
He described her in his memoir as deeply compassionate, but also as someone who won't let you get away with anything, noting that she was the one who kept him honest.
That suggests a crucial source of grounding and accountability in a life full of creative upheaval and professional pressures.
Absolutely. Tragedy did strike, however, during his commercial peak. We should mention the loss of his sister, Jean.
She's a computer consultant and a really talented lyricist who wrote for him, for Earth, Wind and Fire, and others.
And she was tragically killed in the 1985 Delta Airlines Flight 191 crash. That kind of sudden loss is just immense.
And speaking of immense personal struggles, his 2014 memoir Possibilities revealed a very difficult period in the 1990s where he bravely discussed his battle with crack cocaine addiction.
He detailed that his wife and daughter orchestrated an intervention to get him help. He described the moment not just as embarrassing, but also as a massive relief.
Realizing the struggle and the secret were finally going to end.
Exactly, allowing him to get sober. This resilience and ability to confront massive personal challenges is often overlooked, but it perfectly mirrors the philosophical basis of his art: continuous, radical self-transformation.
And this resilience, this capacity for change, is so strongly connected to his spiritual life. Since 1972, Hancock has practiced Nichiren Buddhism as a member of the Soka Gakkai International.
Part of his practice includes the daily recitation of the Buddhist chant Nam-myoho Renge-kyo.
So how does this spiritual focus connect with the restless innovator we've been discussing?
The connection is central to his worldview. Nichiren Buddhism emphasizes the concept of changing poison into medicine, turning personal struggle into positive action, and the inherent interconnectedness of cause and effect. And
Right.
crucially, it promotes the idea that you contain everything you need to transform your life and your environment.
So for an artist who constantly rejects stagnation and embraces new genres every 5 years, the philosophy of continuous self-transformation and pushing one's own perceived limits is a perfect spiritual anchor.
It makes complete sense. The relentless pursuit of the next phase is driven by an internal philosophical mandate, not just commercial ambition.
And the dialogue between Hancock, Wayne Shorter, and Soka Gakkai International President Daisaku Ikeda on jazz, Buddhism, and life was published in 2013, which formalized this link.
He also explicitly connected these ideas in his 2014 Harvard lecture titled Buddhism and Creativity.
Now, for the final detail that perfectly encapsulates this blend of mechanical structure and pure cool, let's go back to the car we mentioned earlier.
It's more than just a rich man's hobby. It's a symbol of his early engineering focus.
The 1963 AC Shelby Cobra. He bought it at age 23 for $6,000, and he still owns it. It's legendary among car collectors.
It is serial number CSX 2006, the sixth Cobra ever produced. That alone is rare, but the details make it unique.
It's one of only 75 originally produced with the smaller 260 cubic inch engine.
And it is the only Cobra ever equipped with a two-barrel carburetor. That level of uniqueness and detail, the absolute one-off configuration, is extraordinary.
The fact that he recognized that detail, bought that machine, kept it running, and still appreciates its mechanical singularity today, it perfectly aligns with the electrical engineer side of his personality.
Someone who understands and cherishes the inner workings of a complex, groundbreaking machine.
That car is now estimated to be worth more than $2 million.
And he plans to give the vehicle, which has been with him through the Miles Davis Quintet, the Mondishi era, the Headhunters Revolution, and the hip-hop phenomenon, to his grandson.
Wow. It passing on not just an asset, but a piece of history and a symbol of his life's journey. When you look back at Herbie Hancock's extraordinary, multifaceted journey, what stands out is his relentless, almost philosophical commitment to continuous radical change.
He took classical piano precision and applied it to post-bop innovation. Then he harnessed the structural rigor of his engineering mind to master complex electronic synthesizers, fusing them flawlessly with funk, hip-hop, and pop.
His legacy isn't defined by one genre or one era, but by his unique ability to integrate these seemingly disparate elements.
From the modal calm of Maiden Voyage to the deep groove of Headhunters and the technological shock of Rockit, he never stopped pushing the sonic envelope. He always saw the keyboard as an endless palette of possibilities.
So what does this all mean for you, the learner? The fact that he was trained in electrical engineering, the fact that he practices a form of Buddhism focused on cause and effect and internal change, and the fact that he built a career on improvisation and structure. These three elements are inextricably linked in his art. They define him as the ultimate synthesist.
Which raises an important question for you, the listener, to mull over. What creative power lies in Hancock's synthesis of rigid structure-like engineering or classical music and constant intentional change, like his Buddhist philosophy and his commitment to improvisation?
And how does that approach, that refusal to stagnate, continue to shape the evolution of jazz and popular music today, influencing everyone from Flying Lotus to Kendrick Lamar?
It's a deep dive that keeps going. We highly recommend exploring his Charles Eliot Norton Professor of Poetry lectures at Harvard, particularly The Ethics of Jazz, to delve further into that complex connection between philosophy and performance.
Thank you for joining us for the deep dives into the extraordinary life and machines of Herbie Hancock.